Welcome to a captivating two-part episode where we dive into the fascinating world of powder formulation with the dynamic duo, Kevin and Nathan Biller. As the go-to problem solvers for the industry, they possess an unparalleled mastery of powder chemistry. Far from the stereotypical image of stuffy chemists, Kevin and Nathan bring a fresh perspective, breaking the mold to address the industry's evolving needs. Today, we uncover the intricacies of their approach and explore how they're reshaping the narrative around powder challenges. Prepare to be inspired as we discuss not only the challenges, but also untapped opportunities that may just spark your innovative spirit. Get ready to level up your powder coater game. Welcome to Roscoe's Powder Coater Podcast. I'm your co-host, Kim Scott. Somewhere in the back is my husband. That's why I keep saying I'm a co-host, because he's really back there working, and maybe he pops in, maybe he doesn't. Where we interview influencers and talk about trending topics so you can grow your powder coating biz. I'm super excited and stoked to have what I consider rock stars in the powder coating industry. Kevin Biller is the founder of Powder Coating Research Group out of Columbus, Ohio, which was recently acquired by ChemQuest Group. They are billed as the global specialty chemicals and materials consulting services, including strategy, technology development, efficiency building, and mergers and acquisitions. And his very accomplished son, Nathan Biller, who is the expert formulator dude. Together, they run the Powdcast, Ask Joe Powder podcast that focuses on chemical industry and answers technical questions from coders who write in. Today's topic is about powder formulation. Pretty simple. And, sometimes we get so wrapped up and busy about and focused on maybe sandblasting or how to powder coat or equipment malfunctions that you sometimes kind of skip over the powder part of it, or just the understanding the basics of powder formulation. So that's why I've asked these two very special guests to come on the show today so that we can kind of cover some of the fundamental differences between polyesters, urethanes, acrylics, TGICs. So what do you say? Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's a good intro. And you know what? One of the problem areas in the powder coating world, one of the things we do often is solve problems, troubleshoot and solve problems. But there's a misconception sometimes. People say, well, it's a powder coating and it's bulletproof. It can do anything. But there is a difference between the different chemistries. And, some of them are much better for corrosion resistance. Some of them are superstars for outdoor durability. Some of them are perfectly placed for indoor applications like metal office furniture and things like that. Some are designed specifically for appliances. So people have to be careful when they make a decision. Like, for instance, sometimes people will say, I need a semi-gloss black powder. And they'll, the powder supply will deliver that. And the powder user will make the mistake thinking that it's going to pass every requirement that ever could be imagined. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. So anyway, chemistry is real important.
It's true. And, again, this show is always about sharing our journey, right? Just everyday stuff that happens around here. And just last week, I had two contractors reach out to me on two different, it ended up being on the same house, but one was regarding 2605 finishes. and having to explain to the general contractor what all that is and why you have to pay more for that, and what the warranty, what's the core components of a 2605 versus a 2604. It was very educational to me. I reached out to several different people and got that kind of settled. But the other one was kind of interesting because, and that's why I want to share it with you today, is it was a window, the powder that was on this window from a window manufacturer was a rowel, but it was a textured rowel. And I looked high and low. You may know it where to go for textured rowels, but it was very difficult to explain that to the people that I was working with, including the window representative here, as well as the fabber for this gate, and the general contractor who was installing the windows and doors trim for this house. And they kept saying, well, it's just a rowel. It's just a rowel. Go get it anywhere, right? So somebody mentioned, go to Prismatic, just because I guess they were familiar with that. And I'm like, okay, where are you seeing this? Because I'm looking for this specific, because it's textured. It actually said FS, which meant fine structure. I guess that's just another word for texturing. So they just thought that I could just get it off the shelf like it's nobody's business, but you can't always do that. So you can't always get what you want unless you source it. So anyways, that was my journey. And it ended up being in Poland that I could get this, so I'm like, I'm dropping out. I'm not going to special order powder when you guys can go ahead, and you're already a client of this company. Go ahead and order it through them. So they're going to deliver and provide us the powder to do these gates because the owner wants it all matchy-matchy.
Well, yeah, and RAL is only referring to the color. It's a set of color standards out of Germany, and so that doesn't mean anything about the gloss, the texture, the chemistry, the performance, anything about the powder. It's just like, okay, what color is it? And then, yeah, like you said, there's a lot more to what goes into a powder than just what color it is.
And texture is independent of the chemistry per se, because basically you could say, could you give me a textured 2604 kind of 5-year Florida durability? Or you could say, no, it has to be 2605 and I want a texture. But, it's not like one or the other is the only textured version. Chances are, though, the more you get into 2605, there's a certain palette, a certain portfolio of pretty common, materials that are, common in the architectural world. If you want a specific gloss that's outside of that portfolio or a specific texture, it may be a custom product. The other thing, when you use the word texture is in the eyes of the beholder. It could be a fine texture, or it could be a lopey kind of orange peel texture. Or it could be real coarse, like a anti-skid texture. So texture requires definition, which could either be like a control color panel or maybe a set of standards that you can compare it to. You can't just say, give me this kind of texture, and expect your verbal description is going to be understood by your material supplier.
Yeah, and I think, it's just an example I wanted to bring up to kind of get the show started. That these are the kind of problems that I would guess everyday coders have to solve, because the industry that we talk to, which are our end customers, right? Could be contractor, could be project manager, interior designer. could be homeowner. It's this constant educational thing that we have to get into with them that kind of complicates things, as well as just, I guess, usually people will relate to powders as they are, as if they were paints. Like, I can't just go down to the store and get this paint. So, the premise of this show is a perfect bit, or this example is just a perfect way to kind of introduce this show as to how complicated things can get sometimes, but also let's just kind of roll it back a little bit and keep it simple. Just as an intro course, because I'd love to, or intro on Powder 101, right? Just so we have some general better understanding of that side of the industry that we could maybe help define and educate our customers on, right? Our end customers on. But before we get started, let's back up and show you where to find the podcast. Let's do that. So let me share my screen. So it's called the Ask Joe Powder Podcast. And what? Is it bad?
Well, my code is broken. Yeah, it actually looks really pretty when it's in a different browser.
Oh, okay. Darn it. Okay, well,
No,
we'll, we can kind of, we'll fix it. We'll get it fixed. It'll look nice and pretty, but usually I go to the Burberry one or something like that. So, yeah. Well, now you got something to do after the show. And
right,
then,
yeah, when you have a powder formulator do your HTML, that's what happens.
Yeah. You guys are up to 48 episodes. I love your show. It is chemistry based, but then you also, as always, Ask Joe, you've always been answering questions either in the, in trade magazines, you've been around. I know when I go to every time I go to Powder Coating Week, everybody wants to talk to you guys. Everybody is there to say hi to you. I mean, sometimes you just might want to just have your own little side section of the show for you guys. And I was surprised that the Luddites were there. Remember when we were I was talking to you, and then the two gentlemen came up, the Luddites were they from Pennsylvania?
They're Luddite. No, well, they're Amish. These are Amish people.
Amish. Okay.
Yeah. In this part of the Midwest, typically they associate themselves or describe themselves as Amish, which, wow. The thing is, those two guys you met or saw us talking to, they've got an amazing factory. They've got some really high-tech equipment, laser cutting capabilities, CNC, robotic welding. They're very, very advanced. It's not like steam powered or horses or something.
I'm not sure who decides to draw the line and where, but yeah, it sounds like they have a pretty high-tech setup for being.
They're putting in a new powder line. That's probably part of the reason why they're tugging on our sleeves.
Yeah, they were very polite. Of course, I had to zip my mouth because I like to swear a lot, and I'm like, whoa, okay, I better be on my best behavior because I'm just a Catholic girl, right? I swear a lot. So,
well, as long as you go to confession on Saturday.
Exactly.
I'd had 4 beers by the time they came up too. So
they were very nice men. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, that was my thing. I'm like, wait, Amish and powder coating? Who knew, right? Who knew?
Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, it's like people find us. You mentioned Poland, and yeah, we're doing work with one of the renowned universities in Poland. They're doing academic research in powder, and we're connecting the dots with the practical side. We're material people, but we're technologists. We make things work. So we
Right.
take components, we're formulators, we make things work, but we work with scientists, we work with end users, we work with equipment manufacturers.
Yeah, let's bring up your website too. I want to bring up ChemQuest because you started, just give us a little bit of a brief background on, your company was just recently purchased by this one. And I had no idea until I landed on their site all the stuff that they do. I imagine you kind of came in on the materials side, right? Whereas they were doing all this other business strategy stuff and M&A advisory.
Falls under technology development there. But yeah, you're right. ChemQuest has traditionally been market research, business strategy, mergers and acquisitions, those sort of like real consulting, businessy type of stuff. I think 6 or 7 years ago, they bought a laboratory in Southern Virginia that does liquid paint. And so they do solvent-borne, waterborne, high solids. They do adhesives, like all sorts of technologies, but their expertise when it came to powder coating was minimal, to be generous. They had a powder, they had a booth and a spray gun and an oven. They could spray a powder, but they didn't have the knowledge or the experience. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. And it's funny that all this is happening today. Sometimes I think it's just so coincidental, or that we happen to be, today is the podcast, and I get an email from Tiger this morning saying that, their raw material prices are stabilizing, and this brings good news. Effective May 15th, we'll be reducing the existing surcharge. So they're reducing this charge, but they're still keeping the charge. And I always kind of said I don't know if they'll ever roll back all the surcharges. I don't know. You might feel differently about it. And who knows what these companies are thinking, these powder suppliers are thinking. But I mean, it's nice to know that they are decreasing it. They only decreased it a little bit, but there's still surcharges. And sometimes in industries, when they do surcharges, I think that they're there to last, right? They're there to stay, not really ever roll them back because they like that extra money.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the issues with the supply chain, globally the last couple of years, they're real. Like those were real problems, and we're finally out of the woods with most of this stuff. But there was a time, 2020, where you just couldn't even get titanium dioxide or
right.
solid epoxy resins, and then when you could get it, it would cost you extra to get to the top of the list. And then, finally it seems like things are settling mostly back to normal. But you're right. Once people get a taste of, wait, we can charge a little bit more, people still buy it, then what?
Well, the cost of a container was north of $20,000.
Yeah.
Back at the height of the nonsense. And
right.
It was a confluence or collision of many factors, but just the fact that it cost, over $20,000 per container to get it across, the Pacific Ocean. Now it's down to $3,000 a container. Big difference. They had that big freeze in the Gulf area, which, Houston and the Gulf Coast.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember
which
that.
shut down a lot of the next step from the refinery to making the monomers and oligomers that make our polymers. And they just didn't see that coming. And it took a long time to fix that. The other thing, Kim, that I'm seeing, there's this drive, I put it in one of my newsletters, this movement of reshoring. We've all heard of reshoring, and taking stuff that we were doing that we were getting from far away, the Asia Pacific in particular, reshoring that manufacturing or fabricating. But the other thing I'm seeing is it's called nearshoring, and we're seeing it in Europe and here. And you know what that means? It means Mexico for us mainly. Like, okay, it's a better bet to have things manufactured in Mexico than it does in China, because it's more predictable and it's easier to deal with. In Europe, it's more Turkey, the Balkans, maybe a little bit from
former Soviet states.
Yeah, but Romania and places like that. So this whole concept of let's get the cheapest stuff from far away, people are saying that's a bad strategy going forward. So there's that transition. It's going to take time for all that to settle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to share my screen one more time because another email came in this morning. And it's something that we've covered here. I recently did a podcast with another podcaster called The Coating Show, where he just covers paint and powder and all kinds of other kinds of coatings and stuff. We kind of featured it through the SEMA show because they're, SEMA is fighting a lot of the EPA stuff. They've, they're fighting a lot of the right to repair. I don't know if you've heard of any of that. It's a kind of a serious thing where they're going to limit a lot of small business intentionally, I think, and mostly because technology in cars is getting more complex. Now they're introducing, they want basically in this article, they're explaining that they want 2/3 of the cars by 2036 or 35 or something. They want 2/3 of all cars to be EV, and they're incentivizing these major manufacturers on that. But the email was about how the SEMA CEO, and just for those that don't know who SEMA is, that's the specialty aftermarket organization that puts on the auto show every year, but they also do a lot of industry stuff for the aftermarket manufacturers for cars, parts, and everything, the gamut, anything aftermarket. And I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention because the problem isn't going away. It's only getting more and more heated and intense. So let me share this screen here on my email. And basically, I probably should just go to there we go. SEMA and its members, this is the president of SEMA or the CEO of SEMA who's meeting in front of the EPA to fight the emission standards for motor vehicle models 27 to 32, which it's just the beginning, but it's the future of car making. And they're basically, he's just basically saying SEMA and its members have serious concerns about the proposal, which aggressively seeks to lower carbon emissions under timelines that effectively make electric vehicles the de facto choice options for automakers to meet the requirements. Governments shouldn't pick winners or losers. This far too fast mandate will create a seismic shift for small businesses who don't have the capacity to make the shift this quickly, especially when they're not receiving billions in government funds like the large automakers are to fund electric vehicle programs. Anyways, it's.
I think it's interesting though. There's so many people. I think they're dinosaurs a lot of times who are so resistant to change. I built my whole career on new technology. And like with the coatings industry, when I started industrial coatings, people are like, oh, you can't replace solvent-borne paints, and powder coatings are the worst thing ever. And the major paint companies said that throughout the 70s and into the 80s. And they're going like, powder is a joke and it won't work and everything. And then when people found it was better, it was cleaner, it was more economical, it was higher performance, they jumped on board. And this was in the mid to late 80s and early 90s. I'm no expert on automotive technology, but it's like smartphones. People are like, I don't need a smartphone because that's too much and whatever. I see people, I see both sides of the argument. You don't want to kill small businesses. I've been a small business person for the last 25 years, but you also have to look at future. And I always feel technology that works well and that has the right economics is going to win every time. With powder coatings, I think the growth in the industry and the technology was based on performance rather than somebody crushing people with regulations. I think there was always a way around them.
There's a little bit of that. I mean, powder is always easier to sell with the sustainable and environmental. It's just compared to anything with solvent in it, it's always going to have that more compelling.
Yeah. But anyway, it's like, I hear people say, oh, you can't do this. And I understand you can't subsidize things always to get change. I'm not a big one for big government, but I like to ask people, have you ever driven an electric car? They're a lot of fun to drive.
Yeah.
And they make a lot of sense. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but like my experience through the last 4.5 decades, powder coatings won because they were better and had the right economics. And I know that's what you're doing. That's your business. That's, and I don't know. I hesitate when I hear people say, oh, you can't make us change. I believe that and I understand that, but I think technology and better technology is going to win. And if it's electric cars, fine. If it's hydrogen, fantastic. If it's a plug-in hybrid, which one of my cars is a plug-in hybrid, it's got a battery and it's got an engine, and it's delightful. And it's like I don't go to the gas station very often. I get 90 miles per gallon. But anyway, I understand what people have to have a certain amount of pushback. We've run into that even with coatings associations where they're like, we can't say bad things about solvent-borne coatings. I'm like, well, I will. And I know I'm biased, but it's like here's the advantages, here's the disadvantages. You make the decision. So anyway, so are they concerned that they're going to have to drive electric vehicles to their small business?
No, I think what it is they're restricting the right of who you should go to fix your car. So that's just, that was one of, so that's part of the whole right to repair, the whole,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. See, so they are limiting your choice by mandating all of these. Yeah, it's a big thing, and in the let's just say that if it did happen tomorrow, we're like at very high interest rates right now. It's just killing capitalization of your business, right? It's getting that new piece of equipment that much more expensive. It's and it's going to put a damper on small business growth if you can't afford the equipment that you need in order to educate your employees or take that, EV equipment, right? Or EV car in to get repaired, right? So it's a consolidation. It's an attempt to create consolidation in the marketplace so that you're going to bigger places. Now, if you're for instance, if you want to make this into a powder coating argument, if you're a small coater today, and you want that growth in regional growth or area growth, then that's to your advantage, because you're going to do whatever it takes to get new equipment, continually to take on more business or expand business services, stuff like that. That's a good thing. But the small guys are going to continue to struggle. So it's a good time to get into powder coating. I don't know how much longer it will be if you're going to try to start up, because you know how expensive it is to get started in powder coating. So anyways, just some thoughts to consider.
Are they saying that it's going to put repair shops out of business? Is that part of the argument?
Yeah,
so
I think that's the underpinning.
It's interesting. Like I did make the switch to electric cars, and one's a plug-in hybrid, but there's no maintenance. There's no spark plugs. There's no oil to change. There's no coolant. There's no right there. The brakes, you need to change your brakes every 100,000 miles, maybe, because of the braking systems are more advanced. It's like you need wiper blades and you need tires.
Well, but that's the future, and the push for everyone to have an EV car. But the other thing is what about the cars that are already running? Right? Are you going to dampen those cars? Are you going to eliminate those cars? Are you going to make taxes on those cars more expensive? Are you going to penalize the people that are working on those cars now, and stuff? And I said, another law that they're working with at SEMA is the RPM law, and I think it's in Florida, so where they're trying to define what does the government mean in their regulations, like what car is, they're just trying to define these cars, because it's more about a definition about EV versus gas guzzling or diesel or whatever, right? So they're just trying to define what a custom car means with their RPM law. And I think they went to Florida. I don't know. I haven't caught up with how the outcome of that bill went. I know it's gone through a couple iterations already. Anyways, it's just something to kind of pay attention to, not just because we powder coat vehicles, from frames to rims to bumpers to all kinds of parts on a car, but it's just a small business kind of perception that I kind of pay attention to, and want to share with my audience what I learned, because I'm into trends and I'm into this global climate change initiatives and directives and what it means for small business in general, right? Just as someone with a small business, I think it's important to pay attention to. But I know we're kind of getting sidetracked on all of this, but I just wanted to share some news that kind of came through this morning that I thought would be really kind of interesting to kind of get your take on and get your perspective on. But let's get into choosing the chemistry for end use requirements in powder coating. I mean, it's a really important thing to know about some formulations and why they work. What's your best choice for what you're doing? It's not always about price or color. What do you guys want to talk? Where do you want to dive in?
Let's see. I guess I could give just a little anecdote, like something that might be interesting. But like, I have a used car, and the previous owner of that car did a couple of little custom things here and there, but they got the wheels powder coated, as a lot of people do. But long story short, they look terrible. They look absolutely awful. I think what they probably did is they went into their local job shop, maybe their buddy, and said, "Hey, let me look at your colors that you have." And they found this like really cool looking metallic vein hammer tone type of
beautiful.
Yeah, it probably looked awesome on the aluminum beer bottle that he had in the front of the shop. And so, yeah, they went and, coated these wheels, and guy probably drove them around for 6 months. And now, as soon as I have it, it's faded, it's chalked, it looks awful. There's brake dust that, I can't clean off of it. And, I'm supposed to be this guy that knows things about powder coatings. I'm driving around like that. So, yeah, obviously I'm going to get them redone.
Well, the guy took his wheels to his shop and said, "Hey, what do you got?" And they said this. He goes, "Wow, that looks great." Didn't say anything about chemistry. And, an automotive wheel, it's going to be outside some of the time. And
even in Ohio, there's some sunlight.
so they put a hybrid. They put a hybrid probably that would look really cool on something indoors. And like Nathan said, it started chalking, and it looks exactly like the way an epoxy polyester hybrid would chalk after months, not years. And I think the key here, Kim, is communication is really important. Mm-hmm. Knowledge and communication. So if somebody wants something powder coated, it's important. And this is what you guys do. You and your husband. It's like, what are you going to do with this? Where, what is the end use? Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. But you say, oh, you need an outdoor durable coating.
Right.
Let's talk about polyesters. Let's talk about maybe polyurethanes. But it's like, you can't have a hybrid or an epoxy or whatever. You don't want to make that mistake. But I run into this problem because I do troubleshooting. I actually get involved with legal cases. I'm an expert witness, which when an end user calls me and says, "Hey, I have a problem," it's like, okay, let's fix it. When I get a call from a lawyer, it's like it's too late. It's somebody made a claim, and I'm like, my goodness, somebody should have called me 6 months ago, a year ago, and headed it off before it became $1 million lawsuit. I've run into situations, it was playground equipment, and the resin was the proper resin. Okay. So it was a super durable 2604 formulation platform, but some knucklehead in the laboratory, and it really is, people make mistakes, to make the bright red for the playground equipment, they put in a cheap red pigment. The resin was 2604. Everything in it was 2604 except for the pigment, and they used a cheap red pigment, and red pigments are notorious. You have to spend a lot of money on a red pigment to get that high quality, automotive type performance. And the equipment was in Arizona. I don't know if it was Tucson or Phoenix, but it was like, they called and they said, it's pink on one side and it's red on the other. And, it's the southern facing was chalked, and the stuff in the shadow was still good. So it's incumbent upon whoever is spraying a powder to ask, is this stuff outdoor durable? You can't make assumptions. It's really important.
Right. I think that's where loyalty comes in with powder suppliers, right? You get used to, not only does a certain powder shoot well in your shop, but it also, it's just the people and the relationships you build too, and the brands that you can rely on that bring you that consistency. We try to kind of play it across the board here. We certainly listen to what our customers' needs are first, and then kind of either go, okay, we can do that, or no, this is a better choice, and we kind of just direct them where we want them to go.
Well, another thing, and I think Nathan's more of an expert on this than I am, but metallics and durability. And you probably run into this, Kim, where they say we won't provide a warranty unless there's a clear coat over this.
Right. Yeah, and that's another part of the wheels of my car is
Exactly.
that to get that sort of a vein
we know what
pattern,
they put in it.
you use leafing aluminum, which is an untreated grade of aluminum, which makes it lay out really nice and smooth when it bakes, but then it has no resistance to anything. It's
Anything.
water turns
Right.
it brown, cleaning it turns it brown.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what even color it was when they first put it on there.
It's so chalked.
So,
Right.
yeah, there's a big difference even between, one silver, one sparkle silver and another, because there's different levels of treatment that they put on those pigments to last longer and longer outside.
And you should really read the technical data sheet thoroughly. I mean, both pages, the back, front, whatever, because it may say this is not recommended for outdoor, even if it
Right.
says, non-TGIC polyester, whatever they call it, TGIC for it, maybe not. But, we've caught people, and again, like we're problem solvers, people have trouble in the field. And there was one where it was a company that made medical equipment and the coating was coming off in the, in the field. The field's a surgical room. It wasn't UV related. But then we dug around, we said, the powder you're using is not recommended for medical applications. The medical application was autoclaving and stuff, to kill germs and all that stuff.
Really aggressive cleaning process.
Exactly.
And so, typically you'd think like an epoxy powder, like those are the most chemical resistant. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be the strongest. You're not worried about outdoor durability because this is all happening indoors. But that stuff that they had just wasn't good enough for like the really aggressive cleaning processes that are involved when there's brain tissue involved.
So we said, I asked them, I said, how did you select this one for all these expensive medical equipment kind of things? We like the texture.
Oh my goodness.
It comes full circle here because it's like they said, we like the texture was what we like.
It looks really cool.
It is a good looking coating. But we know the powder manufacturer and they never would have said you can use this on medical
so
equipment.
Do you think a simple call would have just solved that immediately? Or, I mean, I don't know when that happens.
Part of it's knowledge,
right?
and you do the industry a great service by trying to explain things, like by bringing knowledgeable people and subject matter. Knowledge is power, and sometimes people don't know what questions to even ask.
Right.
No,
I mean, end customers for sure, and that's why you got to know what they're thinking. I mean, this house that we're talking about, has these windows that they want to match the gate to now. So that was, earlier what we talked about, right? This fine texture, fine structure, 80-14. And, personally, I would not have a textured gate. The minute the birds start pooping on it, but I guess they're so wealthy, maybe they could just pay to have somebody clean the poop off their gates or something like that.
They could pay to have somebody stand there and shoo them away.
Exactly. So personally, I wouldn't choose, but I know they want to match the color. And so I just, it took a week from talking to the window rep to talking to the window rep that works on the mainland to find out where they get this powder. It's all made in Poland. They're basically just a service company that just takes orders, and it all gets made, fabricated, and powder coated in Poland. And then to find the SDS sheet comes from the Netherlands. So that's kind of interesting too, just diving into where the powder, maybe they're selling the powder and then they're adding the powder or the texture into, I don't know. how they make the powder.
That's a dangerous proposition. And the other thing is Poland doesn't have AMA 2605. They go by
Right.
Qualicoat Class 3.
Qualicoat, right? Yeah, yeah. And
So-
oh man, okay, so we are like, I feel like we're like all over the place, but let's start simply with a question is, what is a TGIC and what is TGIC-free? Because we're hearing both those. Do you want to kind of explain those a little bit?
Sure. And, to get to the root of it, TGIC is a curing agent. So it's in a powder formulation where polyester makes up the bulk of the the resin of the actual backbone of the stuff. TGIC is in there. It's functional ligament that cross links with the polyester, and so that's when you put it in the oven, things melt, and then you get these polymeric networks coming together.
Right. Okay.
TGIC is just one of the ways to cure a polyester.
And if you say TGIC free, well, kind of just what they said it was, it doesn't have TGIC in it. But the most common technique to replace TGIC in polyesters is a curing agent or crosslinker, and it goes by different names. Historically, it was called Primid because they were the first trademark name for that chemistry. And as the patents wore off and you got other manufacturers of that chemical, they just call it beta hydroxyalkyl amide. I mean, say that fast 3 times. But that's the most typical way of replacing TGIC.
HAA.
Yeah, we go HAA for short. And if you just do TGIC versus HAA, everything else equal, that HAA TGIC free will have less performance and be more difficult in your application system. Not spraying, but curing. It doesn't have low temperature cure capability like TGIC does.
Yeah, the bottom temperature for curing is lower. The
chemical resistance is worse.
The film thickness, you can only go so thick before you start getting defects in the form of pinholes. So it's, from a formula standpoint, it's almost a drop-in replacement, but for performance, it's really not.
Yeah, and yet Europe is mandating that, right? I mean, we have to kind of look at Europe to that. Their regulations are.
They're not mandating it. People say it's banned. It's not banned.
It's not banned. No,
it's not banned. People say, "Well, TGIC is banned." It's not banned. It requires a special label. It's got like the label. They have these pictograms now. It's the one where it has the guy's head exploding and the dead fish. Not the guy's head exploding, but it has a toxicity emblem that has to be on the package, and people are like, oh, that scares people.
Yeah, effective. I mean, it's like a soft ban, though. I mean, effectively, people don't want to use it because because it doesn't look good.
Yeah, but that being said, we're formulators, Kim, and we had a customer, and they said this is a end use that has a high chemical resistance requirement, and we want to get TGIC products out of our facility. So the incumbent supplier said, oh, we'll do a TGIC-free HAA Primid, and they, submitted it to them, and it failed the durability test. And the durability in this case was chemical resistance and resistance to cleaners and a couple other things. It had to be a real robust coating. And 2 things happened. The actual OEM, it was an OEM, they contacted us and said, hey, you got any ideas? And we said, of course we do. But the powder supplier independently contacted us and said, hey, you guys, we don't know how to formulate this so that it'll meet their chemical cleaner, whatever, in service type it was an automotive application. Performance, do you guys know how to do it? And we're like, yeah. But they just wanted us to give them a formula like over the phone almost. And we developed a technology that was non-obvious, that was chemically resistant, low temperature cure, relatively reasonable in cost, and non-TGIC. And that's what they said. That's it. That's it. That's what works. We haven't seen it anywhere else. And, we're formulator dudes, like you said earlier. We gave the formula to a powder manufacturer and said, hey, can you, kindly make this product for this OEM? And it's like, okay.
That's what I'm learning about, in terms of just these questions that everyday solving problem stuff I have to go through, right? Is that there's more than meets the eye, right? You just need to kind of reach out and explain yourself or what you're looking for to your supplier to see if they can help.
You know what? If I was in your shoes, I would have, and I know you guys do some of this, more than one powder supplier because, availability, price, maybe portfolio might be a little different between, different suppliers, but maybe they don't have this anymore, but there used to be smaller companies that said, we'll do customs and we'll do custom, and our turnaround is 7 business days or something. And, here's what our pricing structure is. That may be kind of becoming less and less available. But I know when I owned a powder coating manufacturer, that was our key business. We did specialties. We did stuff other people couldn't do. Either they didn't want to do it or they didn't know how to do it. And somebody says, we need a textured 8014, 2604, 20 gloss. So yeah, but it's going to take, 7 to 10 days or something. And here's the price. And then they could go to their customer and say, okay, it's going to cost more, but this is, this will be exactly what you want. Or you could have the smooth one. What do you think? And then it's like, take your pick.
Yeah.
We used to do the customs, and they were usually smaller batches. And we charge a lot for them because we had to, but there was a market for it.
I think the industry was going that way. I was hearing it from a few people that were a few different suppliers that were kind of trying to get into lower minimums for customs. Yeah, it seemed like it all just kind of went away when the pandemic, because, the supply chain thing really kind of messed everybody up. So I think people just kind of tabled that. Maybe it'll get back to that later as things kind of smooth out. Obviously, things are moving more positively in the supply chain.
There's a couple components of that too. Like part of it is consolidation. Like all of the, I don't know, just even a few years ago, there used to be a lot more small powder makers, people that could make small custom batches. But we're getting to a point where there's fewer and fewer paint companies that are bigger and bigger, and they're I don't want to say like instead of developing their own technology, but I think that it is kind of a shortcut where huge company can just buy a small company that has interesting technology, and then they get everything that comes with that. And then they can use it for their own purposes. That they might not still have that small business ethos of like, we're the little guy and we're going to make 25 or 50 pound batches for people anymore. It's more about, okay, now big company A has that technology that they developed on their own.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a powder manufacturing company in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, we did just like this kind of work. That was it. It was like something like a dead mat or something, or this or that. like where they said, well, we like this color, but we like the gloss to be blah, 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 whatever, or texture or whatever. But towards the end of the time I owned this company before I sold it, one of the biggest, probably close to being the biggest powder manufacturer in the country, remain unknown. They said, can you make small batches for us? And that became 50% of our business. And they were 50 to 200 pound batches. And they said, okay, this is a goofy purple. This one's an orange, whatever. And when they came and like audited our production, the guy looked around and said, we'd never be able to do this within our corporate culture. And, they would look at how many pounds can you get per man hour, out of this factory door, so they'd say bigger batches, fewer people, more automation. And we were the boutique shop.
Yeah, I believe it. I totally believe it. So I met at Powder Coating Week, I met some people at PPG because I feel like I underrepresent them and I want to be able to have them and order from them more often.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, I get an email from the lead territory manager to say, hey, if there's anything you need, let me know, whatever. And sure enough, just after he emailed me, this 80-22 thing kind of came up. And he's like, well, you can have, I said, the problem I get with you guys is I can order, I don't mind ordering it from you, but you guys are in Texas and it costs money to ship from Texas more than maybe somebody from California or Oregon or whatever, right? West Coast. And he's like, oh, no. If there's no rush in ordering, you can just order it right from your PPG store. And in fact, he goes, it's just 2 blocks from where, he says, I Googled where you are and where your PPG store is. And it's just a couple blocks. I said, I know where the PPG store is. Okay. So but I'm trying to tell you, I went in there 2 years ago and tried to order this color of yours for a job. And the guy looked at me like, what's powder coating? And he didn't believe me. Okay. So this is like an email thing going on 2 or 3 times, every day where, he didn't believe me that that's what happened to me. He calls the store himself and that's exactly what the guy said. He goes, oh, well, that's too much to order. We would have to do this and that. And, he said he doesn't believe me. And then he finally called me back and said, oh my God, you're right. We got to fix this. And I'm like, yeah, I would order you, especially if you're including my order in with their weekly container and I don't have to pay for shipping. Hell yeah, I want that. But I'm not going to fight that. I just walked away and said, oh, well, I'm ordering from somebody else. Right. So sometimes it's just unbelievable what these bigger companies don't. They have these processes, but then they don't realize in the fringes sometimes, when you're a country bumpkin powder coater, where you're way out in the boonies or you're in the middle of the Pacific, you can't get the powders as much as they want to believe that they're everywhere and all the time and everywhere. They're not. It's much harder than said than done sometimes, so.
And it's like you were saying before where, you get a feel for which ones are the best for you. Like, PPG might be the best option for, someone that is listening to this in Boston right now or something, but not for somebody that's in Hawaii because there's all those complicated things with, your setup and location and everything like that. So, I have the same kind of relationship with raw material suppliers. Like I have, if I'm going to get a bag of polyester resin, like there's a list, like, okay, I prefer to get it from these guys. And I know that they'll give me a good price. I know that they'll get it to me quickly, but like, okay, then I've got, the second and third tier that if I can't get it from my first choice, then okay, yeah, I'll ring up.
Or if it's something so special.
Right.
Because we work with oddball outside of the box.
They'd say, we only make this in Italy, and we'll have it to you in 12 weeks. I'm like, okay,
Right.
let me see if someone else has something similar.
Yeah,
Right.
similar supply chain thing, just a different part of it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I just want to be equally represented here, because a lot of designers, they like that Sherwin-Williams, look or finish or whatever. I just got a call yesterday from a hotel that they're renovating right now, and it's a Sherwin-Williams color that we need to match. So he shared that with me, and it's lighting. So, you got to find something that has a lower sheen or dull sheen and stuff. So, I try to help as much as I can to just with what I have, but I'm sure I could offer a lot more if I knew that it would be easy enough to order from some of the larger coders and stuff and not have to worry about shipping all the time. I do want to pass on good savings to my customers, right?
I'll tell you another anecdote, like Nathan said, an anecdote. We have one customer, historically, it was in the past, but he coats things. He manufactures things and coats them, and that's his business. And at one point, he said, "I don't like my job coder." Whatever, wherever he's located. He says, "I don't like them. They're too slow. They blah, blah, blah. The parts come back, damn it, whatever." He was just like, those guys. So he built his own powder application line. Beautiful, high tech. And then about 3-4 years later, he goes, "Damn it, I don't like my powder supplier either." And I'm like, dude. And he's like, "Kevin, I'm building a powder coating manufacturing plant just for me."
Oh my goodness.
So it makes me think of you, where you have to make a semi-gloss textured purple 2604, and you go like, "All right, I'm going to make that." But this guy said, "Damn it, I'm going to do it myself." And he's like,
well, he said, I'm buying a powder application line. He already wrote the check, and he was like, "How do you make a powder coating?"
Oh my gosh.
But
that was our relationship with them, though. Was just matching stuff and teaching them
how to make powder and how to formulate,
how to set up the plant, what testing equipment they need, like all that stuff.
But he's like, well, screw it. I'll make them myself.
Right. I mean, there are people out there that are like that, right? They just, they want to help improve things, or at least for themselves, if not for other people, right?
Well, they want control too.
Right. You want control. Exactly.
I think it was him.
Did he succeed? Yeah. Did he succeed at it?
He's still doing it.
Oh, well, there you go.
And he did all the formulating. He formulated 50, 60 different products for him. So
wow.
I don't even know.